Welcome back to another episode of Between Drafts. In today's episode, a little bit delayed, but we're going over our favorite reads from 2024. Maybe this is the perfect time to do it because everyone will have gotten tired of the best of 2024 lists in December. And now that it's probably late January, early February when this is coming out, it's like, we're not tired of those lists anymore. This is a great time to do it.
Perfect. You want to do quick recaps of where we're at with our stuff and then dive into that?
Yeah. It's been a minute. You want to start?
Sure. Sent out roughly 20 queries to agents, found some really great folks, got 4 full requests for manuscript out of 10 responses. So 6 people not interested in the query, 4 interested. Of those 4, I've sent all of them. I got 3 no's so far and waiting on 1. So with that said, I've started to look at professional editors. There are some really great folks who have left the corporate publishing world to pursue their own ventures. I would guess they're fairly profitable. I think we're going to do a full episode next week on how I'm going through, finding the editors. They're tough to find sometimes. How am I trying to figure out that they're any good, and then reaching out, pricing, timing. We'll go through all that next week. But it's been a little tough, to be honest.
I was going to ask, that ratio sounds quite a bit better than the first time you tried to query, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, it is. The query itself is working. 10 responses, 4 requests, 40% clip is way better than 0 for 90.
Yeah.
So that's improved.
Yeah,
and now it's get somebody to bite on the thing or self-publish. I'm very open to that as well.
Totally. So next week I think we'll talk more about how that process is going, how you're looking for the editor, feedback you've gotten so far. Yeah. That'll be interesting to chat through. On my end, I got the current manuscript off to Scribe so that my editor there can give me the manuscript review, which will probably be pretty similar to the review that you're going to pay someone for.
I would expect so.
Yeah. So I should get that back in 3 weeks now, maybe like 2.5, I guess. And I'm curious to hear what they say. I've got a couple of meaningful changes I'm already planning on doing that I'm going to try to get done before I get it back from them. And then whatever feedback they have. And then final is due mid-February. So.
Mid-February?
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah. I'm a little stressed. Got a lot of shit to do.
It's all good stuff, though.
It's all good stuff. Nothing that energy drinks and other stimulants can't help with.
As he has this else. Is that? No, it's new tonic.
This is the new tonic from Chris Williamson, which is actually quite good.
I've never had one.
I like that it's a little less caffeine than Celsius. Celsius is 200 milligrams, and this is 120. So as an afternoon,
so you can have 2 of those.
Exactly. Yeah. Just double up. But so should we just go ahead and kind of like dive into favorite books from last year?
Yeah.
Go back and forth and see how many we get through in the time we have.
Perfect.
There were a couple we both read. So should we start with Will of the Many?
Yeah.
Right. Because that made your list too, I assume. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially if we're just talking recent releases. Definitely up there.
Actually, yeah. So why don't we start with recent releases then? So Will of the Many. What did you like about it?
A lot of things. If I'm prioritizing it, it does the kind of magic academia setting, but it felt fresh in the sense that it was set up. It wasn't like, oh, he's going to school. It was, he's going here in order to accomplish X mission that is outside of the school.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I thought that was nice because, Harry Potter's influence is just insane. There's so much academia.
Yeah.
Actually, I would argue the academia comes from, starts in this guy.
What is that?
Wizard of Earthsea. It's from the 60s.
Cool.
It's excellent. I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
But I thought Will of the Many was a good take on dark academia. I thought the world itself, Roman inspired. We're 29, 30, 31-year-old dudes.
Yeah.
Obviously, we like Rome. So
Rome.
that's a plus. And I thought the main character was unique enough that I really enjoyed him. Good plot, great pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I definitely agree on all of that. For a 250,000 word book, it didn't feel like it was that long.
I was shocked when I looked that up and it was like 248,000.
Yeah, I was surprised when you told me. I would have guessed 150
Mm-hmm.
based on how quickly I got through it. I'd say the same thing too. It uses the university setting without feeling like another Wizard Goes to School book.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while to get to it.
Yeah, it's at like the 50% mark.
Yeah. So there's a lot of world building and build up before that. I thought the magic system was cool. You know,
It didn't feel like magic so much.
yeah, not entirely. It felt different, right? This
Mhm.
idea that you kind of like lend your capacity to other people.
With the pyramid structure.
Yeah, yeah. It was a neat concept
Mhm.
because, yeah, like you said, it doesn't totally feel mystical, right?
Mhm.
So I liked that. And I thought the ending was quite fun too. Like, especially the epilogue and where the world is going to. That was really interesting.
It left me a little confused.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Super confusing.
Not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way. No, just like, oh, wow. This is it. In the two epilogue chapters, it suddenly builds up the world in a very unexpected way that made me excited for the next book. It's going to come out this year, right?
I believe so.
Is that the plan?
I follow him, and I think he said that, and he's like working on book 3 or something.
Wow. Good for him. It's good pacing.
Yeah.
And then Lightbringer, I think made both
Yeah.
our lists. Did you read? Did that come out in 24 or was it 23?
I either read it early this year or late last year. We just
Okay.
didn't talk about
Yeah. Also loved Lightbringer.
it. Yeah, I thought it was the best recent sci-fi fantasy I've read
Yeah.
in like 5 years.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't read the Red Rising series, it's worth getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth, I'd say, pushing through books 4 and 5. I think.
My hot take, I liked book 5 a lot.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I liked 5 more than 4.
Mhm.
4 definitely felt like the most work to get through, where I quit it 3 or 4 times before I finally got into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Lightbringer just flew. It was excellent. I think what's cool with the Red Rising world is, I mean, one, it does a good job of feeling like it's in between sci-fi and fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
where there's no magic, there's nothing mystical, but it's very soft on the science. There's very little like explaining how the science works. There's no like advanced scientific concepts to really grok. They don't worry too much about travel times between planets or things like that. So it's there, and it's a society built on certain like scientific advancements. It's in the future, all of those things, but it's not heavy on the science.
Yeah, it's much more space opera,
Yeah, space opera. It's a good way to put it.
which I like.
Yeah. So I'd say that was really a fun one too. I actually read 4, 5, and 6 this year, I think, or in 24. And yeah, I'd say Lightbringer is definitely the top.
Some of the character arcs that were completed, perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other new books that you read that you really loved?
I'm trying to read more indie
Oh, cool.
because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
This one guy, I believe his name is Ryan C. Cahill, which is interesting. Just Cahill's the name of my character. Really good writer. I read his novella, which comes before his series.
Okay.
Which is pretty smart marketing when you think about it. I think it was free, and
It's great.
it hooked
It's like a
me.
lead
And
magnet.
once I finish your draft and the second Hyperion, I'm gonna read his series.
Cool.
Because I thought the novella was so good. So it's a great lead magnet. I was like, well, I'll definitely do something like this at some point.
Do you remember the name of the novella?
No, I'm blanking, but I can find it
Yeah.
in 2 seconds. But it's fantasy.
Cool.
I think he's out of New Zealand.
Yeah, I think Lightbringer and Will of the Many were the only new books I read, which is a good thing to keep in mind. I remember PRH said this to me leading up to book launch, where they basically said, think about all the books you read. You very rarely read a book, even the year it comes out, let alone the month.
Totally.
It's often 3, 5, 10 years later. Just like the timelines on books is way longer than you want them to be sometimes.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So, okay, his series is called The Bound and the Broken.
Okay.
And his website is really good. It's very well done. The novella is called The Fall.
Cool.
And I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was a quick read.
Did you read the whole series too? Or just the novella?
No, just the novella so
okay.
far. And I want, now the novella is so good, I want to read.
Cool.
I will read soon the whole series.
What did you like about it?
It was short. It's set, I think, like 300 or 400 years before the current, like his actual series.
Okay.
But the world itself is just like, it wasn't crazy different than anything I've read, but it was extremely well done versions of what I've already read, which I really appreciate. That's almost harder to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm realizing now he uses it as a like you sign up, you get a copy, and you're on his mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
Very smart.
Good marketing.
It's great marketing.
Well, that's something we've talked about a lot, is that if you can bring a lot of the marketing intelligence, not just of indie authors, but of online entrepreneurs, and get trad publishing distribution, that's kind of the ultimate playbook, maybe. I'm excited to get into that part of it with Husk when we're getting closer to publishing.
Yeah. So for that one, I really appreciated not just the book, but knowing, oh, this dude's running his own business. This is a funnel, and it's a very well done funnel, and the book is really good. Yeah. I thought that was cool.
Cool. Yeah. I don't have anything else on the new front. You have anything else on the new front?
The fun one, not fun, but short, another novella. I'm trying to read more novellas because I think they're really nice.
Yeah.
This Irish author, Claire Keegan, wrote Foster, which is a short novella. And then she has a second one that Elizabeth has read, but I have not. But Foster was exceptional, and it's like 100 pages.
Is that fantasy?
No. It's more literary,
cool. And
she's won awards for it. Really, just prose is exceptional.
Great.
Yeah.
Is it about somebody in the foster system? Or?
Nope.
No?
It's set in Ireland, and it's a little hard to explain, but it's quite good.
Cool. All right. I like hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What other books made your list?
Did you read anything else that's kind of recent that caught your eye?
No, honestly.
Yeah.
Those are the only two that... I read one other... I'll mention I enjoyed it. It's recent-ish, called Colony 1 Mars.
SciFi?
SciFi. It's very like... It's like casual sci-fi, like cozy sci-fi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's fun, it's fast-paced, it's not too heavy, and he's got 6 of them up. I only read the first one, but it's kind of like loosely Martian inspired for sure, where basically a Mars base was set up with a number of people, first living on it, and then they all mysteriously died.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Except, it was maybe a couple hundred people. They all mysteriously died, and nobody's ever gone back. But then the base randomly starts transmitting a signal that makes them think there might still be somebody alive there a couple of years later. And so a team is going to try to figure out what's going on, and then bad things happen.
Okay.
So it's fun. It's good. Yeah. Similar to what you were saying about reading indie, that was a self-published one.
Nice.
It was on the top of the hard sci-fi charts, or top 10 for hard sci-fi for a little bit. And that's what made me interested in it. So I was like, okay, we've got 3 Body Problem and The Martian and Project Hail Mary, and then this other book that's kind of clearly self-published. You can kind of tell from the cover sometimes and the description and things.
But it's still doing great.
But it's still doing as well as these books, at least during that period. So I was like, okay, like let's see what's going on here. And yeah, it was fun. I liked it.
I want to read. I want to be very intentional about reading more indie this year.
Yeah,
I think that'd be cool. So if anybody has suggestions,
yeah, good self-published, good indie books.
very open to anything really.
Totally. It's also one of the only ways to find recommendations that other people aren't.
Yeah.
also reading already.
The more and more you go through this whole process, like the more respect I gain for indie authors, like doing everything. That's very impressive. Very cool.
A lot. Yeah. I do wonder what the argument is for working with an indie publisher versus self-publishing.
Good question.
I know.
Yeah, when I say indie, I might be doing the
You're including self-publishing
definition
in that,
wrong.
I assume,
I'm very
right?
much
Yeah.
including self-publishing.
Yeah, I was too. But there are also indie publishers.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to hear where I'm wrong in this thinking. But to me, that seems like the worst of both worlds.
I think there are some that do really creative ways to market
Okay.
or to like they almost put out very upscale books and will help with like a Kickstarter and things like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't know much about it. That could be a cool thing. We get somebody
Yeah,
who's
that'd be
an
worth doing
expert
an
on
interview
that
on.
to do.
I will say in the nonfiction world, Stripe Press is an indie
Yes.
publisher, and they make
Indie.
Yeah, indie. It's not really indie. And they make the best books. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, their production value is insane. It'd be cool if somebody did a Stripe Press for fiction.
Mhm.
That attention to the production quality.
I think there's one that's trying to, and they seem like they're doing a good job. I think it's called Wraithmart.
Oh, okay.
I just spoke with somebody who knows the guy who runs it, and it seems quite similar. That's in their mission. They're also doing like special editions of popular books as well, where they'll
Cool.
spruce up the cover,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
high value, more illustrations, more art. Seems great.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the, if there's a book you love, getting a higher end version of it that has all the extras.
Mm-hmm.
My sister's been getting our girls the illustrated editions of the Harry Potter books.
Very cool.
They're really cool, and they're thick and they're almost coffee
Bigger,
table sized,
yeah.
but almost fully illustrated. And the illustrations are beautiful. They're just incredible works of art. They're really, really cool.
Growing up, I remember my dad got us The Hobbit in that.
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? My dad got me also growing up, it was an illustrated version of Darwin's Origin of the Species.
That's cool.
I don't know if you've read Origin of the Species. It
Nope.
is a boring book. Oh
I'm
my
sure
gosh,
it is. I don't know how it wouldn't be.
so dry. But when you've got all these pictures of animals in the Galapagos, it gets pretty good.
Helps a lot.
Yeah, helps a lot. Helps with the skimming too.
Yeah, especially for a little guy.
Yeah, seriously.
That's cool.
Okay. What about not indie stuff?
I reread East of Eden this year.
Yeah, me too. I was
Wonderful.
gonna mention that as a one we both read.
Yeah.
What made you want to reread it? When did you read it last?
I think high school, and it was one of those things where I don't think I even fully read it.
Yeah.
It was more of a, I got to read this for class.
Turned all the pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll finish the assignments here, and then we'll move on.
Yeah. I do think school kind of ruins a lot of those books.
I agree.
When you have to read them, you never enjoy them as much. And then you get a bad taste in your mouth about a lot of those books. Yeah, about
just classics. For me, I got a bad taste in my mouth about classics in general, which is totally not fair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I reread it we were going to do it on my book podcast with Adil and Neil. Yeah. And Adil was actually the one who turned me on to it back in college. And so I read it in college, not for a class, just for enjoyment. And I really enjoyed it then. I enjoyed it even more this time. I think just my literary tastes have improved in the last 10 years. So really enjoyed that. I was also, to your point about like the classics, it's very readable.
The writing, yeah.
Yeah. It's not and I don't think that's just my taste having improved. It's it's beautiful without being too flowery,
Mm-hmm.
or, it's very simple language. It doesn't really drag on very often. It's relatively quick paced. I mean, a lot happens. You get through 3 lifetimes in it. So I was pleasantly surprised on that front too.
Yeah.
Like, it made me more comfortable recommending it to other people who don't read many classics, because you compare it to, like Russian lit, right? It's just significantly easier to read.
Yeah, Tolstoy is tough.
Anything else in the classics department that you read and liked?
Well, on East of Eden, the thing
Okay.
that, without giving the whole story away, once the 2 brothers are born, that book just, for me, becomes excellent.
Yeah.
Cal is probably one of my favorite characters ever. And the way that Steinbeck is able to make you care about Cal,
Yeah.
even despite his numerous flaws, is, I think, some of the best writing I've ever read.
I think Kathy is one of my favorite characters
in
in any book.
Yeah, she's just
Fascinating, dark,
Mhm.
broken person who you do also feel that degree of empathy for. Honestly, all the characters. Lee is just
amazing.
incredible.
What's the old guy? Not Lee. The guy that Lee really likes. Who? I'm blanking on his name.
Hamilton.
Is it Hamilton? The older.
The older guy who's the neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Him. Hamilton.
Yeah. That's
he-
his last name, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it Hamilton?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's Mr.
I feel bad, but he's awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And him and Lee's relationship is very cool.
Adam is actually kind of a boring character.
He's the most boring character.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah. Which is interesting when a book is like that, where the main protagonist is one of the least interesting characters, but he does feel fairly passive
Mhm.
through the whole book. He doesn't,
He's kind of flat.
he's pretty flat. He doesn't change that much. I can't picture him very well.
After Kathy shoots him.
Yeah. Spoiler. It's like it just in the idea that, protagonists need to have that mix of likability, competence, and proactivity. He's not really any of those.
No. It's kind of everything revolves around him, and everybody around him is so fascinating that it almost enables him to not be,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
He's almost like a quiet narrator, but he's not even the narrator of the story.
Mm-hmm.
He's just this passive participant in it.
Yeah.
Any other classics that you read?
Not this year, I don't think. Well, this one probably
yeah.
a fantasy classic. This is the second one. So the first one is called Wizard of Earthsea.
Cool.
Ursula K. Gwynn.
Mhm.
Excellent. And there's 3 of them. They're all roughly this length. This is
It's what,
130,
pages?
140 pages. And so good, so well written. She gets so much stuff into so few words. That's pretty awesome. This is a series, probably one of the, I would argue, most important fantasy series ever written.
Cool.
It really, I think, helped jumpstart the whole genre, specifically around like magic and things like that. Because it's not epic fantasy like a Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
so it's very different than that, and I think it's just a great story.
And you mentioned it started the going to school.
I don't know if
trope
it
too?
started
Or
it,
was
but it
one of
was
the
one of the
first big-
first big ones that did that, where it's like, okay, this kid has magic, he's learning from somebody. In this one, he like has a quote unquote master,
Mm-hmm.
but then he gets a little dissatisfied with master and chooses to go to school instead.
Oh, interesting.
And then from there, the story expands. It's hard not to give too much away, but it's quite good. And you'll see, at least I saw a bunch of how the current fantasy genre could be very much still influenced by something like this.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned she packs a ton into very few words. Is that a ton of action, a ton of world, a ton of
A lot of
character? everything?
All of it.
All of
Yeah,
it?
she's just excellent.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's tough.
It's it's very impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Is that in kind of a like Hemingway iceberg, like what's not said type of way, or is it is it very minimalist?
I don't think it doesn't feel as minimalist as that. I think she's excellent at choosing what scenes to put on the page and what not to.
And what happens off stage? Cool.
And I'm like a little bit into. I have a bad habit of reading 5 books at a time.
I feel you.
So I'm a little bit into this one. The first one is what I'm talking about here, and it's just super good, and it's pretty quick.
Great. Yeah, I guess along a similar line, my favorite older read from the genre would definitely be Hyperion. I mean, you read it too last year, right? It was just
the structure, everything.
Yeah, the structure, style. It's interesting in a bunch of ways. One that stood out is it is a sci-fi book, but pretty light on the science, and introduces relatively confusing concepts that don't get explained for hundreds of pages. I mean, as the simplest example, they have teleportation effectively in that universe.
The fuse. The
farcasting.
Yeah.
And they just start using the word farcast. We farcasted here and farcasted there. And you have no idea if it's teleportation, if it's a ship, if it's like wormhole, until the final story that explains it, or the second to last story that explains how it works, which is pretty interesting because, I mean, I get this feedback a good amount of oh, you need to explain how this thing works
totally
right away. And my instinct is it's fine to explain it later, as long as it's not horribly confusing. And so in some ways it was a little rewarding or a little validating to see it done that way in that book. And then also on top of it, it's not that much science, really. No. Most of the stories are very so the book is told through six
or seven. It's one of those.
Yeah, well, the one guy dies,
I think,
so we don't get his story.
No, but he's still, yeah. I guess
it's either 6 or 7.
Yeah,
6 or 7 basically short stories within the world, told in a group, Canterbury Tales kind of influenced style. And I mean, yeah, some of the stories, the one with the daughter, I was crying at the end of it.
The one that got me was the priest.
Oh.
And then the reveal afterward that the console, I didn't put that together, and then the console figured it out. And I was
yeah, that was such a crazy scene.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So that was incredible. Oh, go ahead.
One interesting thing there, to your point, there's not a ton of science and whatnot, but the use of language, the science wasn't explained, but everything, there were so many names, proper noun names.
Yeah, yeah.
And it would talk about old Earth and all these things and
the other planets.
Yeah.
Whatever the net was that you don't find out until much later in the book.
It hinted at so much lore without, science, to your point, and lore both, without explaining them. It was just this is how, all these people know what these things mean, so they're going to say it. Mm-hmm. And, you don't know it, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Well, it's an interesting challenge with writing, depending on the narrator you choose, around how and when to explain things. Because I've struggled with this a bit, maybe you have too. When you have a first-person present tense narrator, it just doesn't make sense to explain.
Because they already know.
Yeah. And so how do you add it in without it feeling contrived or forced, right? Even descriptions of other characters can be hard to work in sometimes, because when the character sees their father, they're probably not going to remark on their basic appearance because they already know how their parents look, right? So that's kind of an interesting challenge there. And there have been a few times where I'm editing where I'm thinking, it'd be really nice if this was third person right now so that I could naturally add the explanation without it feeling forced.
And I'm also sometimes with mine like, oh, I need the main character to be here because this is important, but it doesn't make sense for him to be there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do I get around
How do I
that?
reference it? Or
Yeah.
totally.
The other thing for Hyperion that I was blown away by was the ability to make each story just the tone so different across
Yeah, the writing
them.
style was so different in each of them.
And it makes sense because it's a different character telling each story, but that
Yeah.
was incredible.
Yeah, 6 different narrators.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, with very distinct
yeah.
voices and writing styles.
Mhm.
It's kind of like what they did with Leviathan Wakes. Have you read that?
Mm-mm.
So Leviathan Wakes, it's the series that inspired The Expanse on
Dope.
Prime.
Okay.
And they're great books. I'm halfway through the second one now. But the author for Leviathan Wakes is James S.A. Corey, which is actually a pseudonym for 2 people.
That's cool.
And they were George R.R. Martin's writing assistants. And so they worked together to help him with some of the Game of Thrones books, I think, as well as the scripts for the shows. And so they got so used to working together, they were like, let's just write a book together. And then they created this whole sci-fi universe. And in the first book, in Leviathan Wakes, there's 2 points of view, and it switches between them, and one of them wrote one point of view and one wrote the other. And it actually worked really well. But then to see with Hyperion, you've got 6 points of view
From one dude.
And probably only 30 pages in each point of view, 30, 40 pages.
So it was kind of a range.
Maybe a little bit longer, but not that long to establish a voice.
Right. It felt like the voices were established on like page 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And you kind of knew what that character was like
You
immediately.
get into it really quickly. Yeah. Super impressive from like the writing perspective, for sure.
I love the poet's style.
Yeah.
It's
Just rambling.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I thought was the funniest was the military general.
Facade.
Yeah, Cassad, because the whole first part of his story is just all this amazing sex he's having. It's like you're
wild.
sitting on a boat telling this story to all these people, and you're going on for 3 pages about your sex. Like,
and then that
pretty
reveal at the end where it's like he's moving. Yeah, that was.
yeah, that reveal was awesome too. Most of the reveals were quite good.
That was very. Yeah, that whole book was super impressive.
Yeah.
Did you read the second one? I haven't read the
Not
second
yet.
one.
No,
Yeah.
it's on my Kindle. After second Leviathan Wakes, I think I'll do
Nice.
that. I've been a bad reader the last couple of weeks between holidays and now
Holidays.
this course stuff.
Yeah.
Just got to get back into it. My other older book that I really enjoyed was Armor
What's that one?
by John Stakely. I mentioned it to you at one point. This one's kind of cool because I think most people know of Starship Troopers, maybe more from the movie than the book. But Starship Troopers by Heinlein, like classic sci-fi novel, people in power armor beating up aliens on a foreign planet. And this author, Stakely, didn't like the way Heinlein wrote Starship Troopers because he thought there wasn't enough action in it. And so he wrote his own book, Armor, that takes place in a very similar universe, very similar idea and themes, but is way more action packed. So it's kind of like a beat 'em up novel, but this like super soldier in power armor beating up aliens, and the action stuff is great, but like the world is very interesting too. And it does this really, it's a very fascinating story in the way it's told, because a third of the way into it, the point of view changes to a character you've no context on and have never heard of.
They're not even mentioned in the
Not
first...
even mentioned, never introduced. It happens with no signposting. It goes from first person past tense to first person present tense.
So new character and new tense.
New character, new tense. You're 100 or 200 years in the future, and you're like super disoriented and confused. And you eventually, this isn't much of a spoiler, but you eventually realize that the whole first part of the story was actually also being told by this character, because he's viewing that character's past through recordings in his power armor. And
That's trippy.
yeah, I guess it can't be 100, not 100 years in the future, but some amount of time in the future.
Yeah.
And you sort of assume that, okay, these are just two completely different plot lines, and we're trying to figure out what happened to this first character through the second character. And the plot lines end up tying together at the end in this just like incredibly satisfying way that you don't really see coming. And the ending is just exceptional. And so that was really cool too, where it was interesting universe, interesting to read for writing action because there's so much of it.
And it's really well written.
Very well written. And then just like the payoff, right? You know, talk about having a satisfying payoff. Yeah, that was cool. And that was, I think, written in the 70s. And there's another book called The Old Man's War or The Forever War.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Forever War was also inspired by the Starship Troopers universe.
Okay. Is it the same author or different author?
I'm mixing them up. Let me look really quickly.
Yeah.
Forever War might be another Heinlein book. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Forever War is the one by Haldeman. Yeah, I'm 90% sure this is what I'm thinking of. And so if you, like in sci-fi circles, people will talk about it as an unofficial trilogy of like Starship Troopers, Old Man's War, and Armor.
That's cool.
That because they're like close enough and kind of inspired that you can almost read them like they're in the same universe. So I need to actually read Starship Troopers, and it's been on my list too.
I like that.
Yeah.
I read a bunch of Neil Gaiman at the start of the year.
Oh, which ones?
Stardust, Norse Mythology, Ocean at the End of the Lane, Graveyard Book, Anansi Boys. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think that was it. I love his writing. It's so unique.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a poet. He's funny, but also really hits you sometimes.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot. My rather hot take is his most popular book, American Gods, is nowhere near his best.
Yeah. American Gods is kind of dissatisfying in the end.
Yeah.
I don't like the ending.
Yeah, I thought it was like a fine book, and I think his other ones are exceptional. So I don't know why that's the most popular one. Maybe I'm an idiot, but...
No, I had the same feeling reading Ocean at the End of the Lane. That's the only other Gaiman book that I've read, and I felt the same. I thought that was much better than American Gods.
My favorite was Stardust.
Okay.
It's like a fairy tale.
Cool.
And you start in this town, I think it's called like Wall. It's in like northern England. And then once the main character gets outside the wall, it becomes kind of fairyland, magic land. And he has this mission to go get whatever. And it's not a spin on an old fairy tale, which I enjoyed. He's just creating a new fairy tale.
Cool.
And so many like are retellings right now. So I thought it was very neat to see just new thing. And it was told from one character's point of view, and then also a second one that I would argue is less important. And he's kind of the bad guy, but just really well done, and how they interact is great.
Cool. Is Stardust one of his shorter ones?
Yeah, it's not long.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. Probably less than 200 pages.
Nice. Anything else on your list? How are you on time? Got a couple minutes.
Those are main ones.
Main ones.
For me, I can't.
I'll flag one.
Go ahead. Go. You got it.
I was gonna say one other one that I had on my list was Daemon by Daniel Suarez, and this is like a hard sci-fi book in the sense of like hard science, and it's really interesting because it came out in 2004, I want to say, and the concept of the book is that a billionaire video game programmer dies, and when he dies, he basically has a kill switch to release this autonomous piece of software onto the internet that can continue acting after his death. And it's basically
like an AI agent.
Yeah. And it basically ends up taking over the world. And so the main character is like a cop who stumbles onto it early when it gets released and is trying to stop it.
Is it a physical thing or a
software
thing?
Yeah, software running online.
Yeah.
But it can like hire people, and so it's hiring people in the real world to be hitmen and go do things. It's taking over companies, it's taking over government systems. It's a really neat concept, and it creates this whole subculture of all the people who are working for it, who are wearing like AR goggles to talk to the AI and
Yeah.
like get assignments from it and to communicate with each other. And you have like levels within his world, and you progress through levels by doing jobs for the Daemon and everything. It's all like web-based payments that he would have called cryptocurrency if crypto had
Yeah.
existed then.
Yeah.
And it's really a cool idea for how there could be what like Balaji would call a network state living within a physical country that's entirely web-based.
Huh.
And it's just a neat world.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. And very good action scenes, like cool tech concepts, interesting characters. And it's a, what's the term for this? Duology? It's not
What
a
does that
trilogy.
mean?
It's just
Oh,
two
two of
books.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of rare.
Yeah. Rare. It's usually one or three. But I'd say the first book is definitely better than the second one. I think he definitely did a much better job creating a cool world and creating conflict in it than resolving it at the end. But it does resolve in a pretty satisfying way at the end of the second book. But the first book really was, I think, exceptional.
Stand out.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
That sounds like one I would enjoy.
Yeah.
Any nonfiction that stood out? We've talked all fiction.
Dude, I did not read much nonfiction last year.
It's rare
I'm
for
pretty,
you, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's super unusual for me. I'm just been all in on fiction. The one nonfiction that I read that I really loved was Logicomix.
Okay.
Have you read this?
Nope.
It's actually, I mean, it's great as a story too. It's a,
I guess you probably read Crypto Confidential a lot.
I did that one too. Yeah. I read Crypto Confidential. Yeah. Easily top pick of 2024. Logicomix is a graphic novel about Bertrand Russell's life and his attempt to solve mathematics. So, and it's told from the perspective of comic artists trying to create the comic you're reading.
Okay.
So it's, kind of meta.
Uh-huh.
And it jumps back and forth between their point of view in the present day, arguing about how to teach Bertrand's ideas through, or teach Russell's ideas, I don't want to use his first name, Russell's ideas through a comic.
First name basis.
Yeah, exactly. We're buds. To the actual story. But then the story is told through Russell giving a speech talking about his history. So you've kind of got these like 3 points in time you're jumping between. But it does a really exceptional job of telling an entertaining story while explaining foundational philosophical and mathematical concepts in a way that's quite easy to understand and grasp, and introducing you to the like history of mathematics theory and like basic epistemology and what we can and can't know, and
What's epistemology mean?
like the study of knowledge.
Cool.
Yeah. So, or the philosophy of knowledge. And it's just good. It's really good. Even if you're not interested in philosophy very much, like you'll get something out of it. And it's a very cool storytelling device. And it's beautifully illustrated. It's a really just beautiful graphic novel. So I loved that one.
Dope.
Yeah. Any for you?
There are a bunch that I referenced or read some of. Very few that I read the full thing. Swim in the Pond in the Rain, probably favorite. That one is just incredible. It's all about Russian literature. Did you read it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
And just so good. And the way he breaks down what those writers were doing and trying to accomplish through pretty minute things sometimes.
Yeah.
That was excellent. One of the best books on writing story I've read.
The format in that book is so good.
It's very, I don't know if I'd read anything like that.
No, where you read a short story and then you read his analysis of it as if you were in his class. It's great.
I wonder if he was only able to do it. All those are probably public domain.
Yeah, they're out of copyright now, I'm sure.
That must be the only reason he was able to do that.
Yeah.
But very unique. I loved the structure and his analysis. That was really good.
Same.
I read Creativity Inc.
About Pixar.
Yeah, I thought that was it was a fun read. Thought it was really well done. Pixar is just interesting company.
Yeah.
Read Crypto Confidential
for the fifth or sixth time.
Exactly. First time between two hardcovers.
Yeah. That was fun. really going to bug me now.
Paul's good work.
Oh, yeah,
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice
Shout out
short
to
read.
Paul.
Really good.
Yeah. That's going to drive me crazy. I'm going to remember it as soon as we
Stop
recording.
Is it nonfiction?
I think so. That's
fair. That's fair.
I need you to work faster.
Yeah, you do.
Come on,
Yeah,
energy
take a
drink.
swig of that.
Okay. Anything else in our last minute here?
No, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah, I
Pretty
think that was-
wide range of books.
Yeah, good list. And next week we'll talk more about hiring your editor.
Finding, hiring, figuring out all the editorial things.
Yeah. And if you're not subscribed to the show, please do that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want the notes from this episode, you can get that on betweendraftspod.com, where you can also find links to our socials and anywhere else that you might want to contact us.
And send us some self-published books. If you have some that you really like. I'm personally really interested in those.
Yeah, send us your indie or self-pub recommendations. That'd be a lot of fun. All right. Thanks, everyone.